So I got up this morning, I checked the forecast, and we had some snow here this weekend. Not a whole lot, maybe about 3 to 4 inches in some places. Some places didn't get much at all. Missouri is kind of hit or miss when it comes to that. But we did have freezing fog. You know, the things that happen in Missouri, I swear to you, the weather out here is unpredictable at best. Look at the weather one day and it's beautiful. The next day it's a snowpocalypse. The next day it's 50 degrees and everything melts away. So that's just how it is here. You kind of have to go with the flow. But I saw freezing fog, and there's a place that I like to come out to that is called the Parkville Nature Sanctuary. And it's right by this lake called Riss Lake, and or Reese Lake, depends on how you want to pronounce it. But this lake, when it rains out here, sometimes this lake fills up and there's an overflow area. And that overflow area comes into this Parkville Nature Sanctuary. So what happens is the lake fills up with water, has to go somewhere, so it creates a waterfall. And it's a beautiful waterfall, actually, here in Missouri, of all things. There's not a whole lot of waterfalls around me. Not like when I go to Oregon, you can throw a rock and find one, right? I'm hoping that when I get to this area where the waterfall is, that there's enough overflow from the rain that we had that will create a waterfall. Now, another thing in Missouri, it was like, 45 degrees on Friday, but raining a lot, like a torrential downpour of rain, that then the temperature dropped almost 20 degrees in a matter of a couple hours, which then turned that into ice, and then the snow came. So what we had was snow coming down on top of ice, which meant some really pretty bad conditions for some people when it came to driving. So my hope is that there was enough rain to fill up Riss Lake that would then create a waterfall here in the Parkville Nature Sanctuary that would then be frozen over. And again, this is all a prediction, and this is kind of the stuff that goes along with doing any type of photography, is that you're trying to predict what you're going to see and kind of almost future pace yourself to a point where it's there, so that you can kind of imagine what it's going to look like, so you can predict what the shooting conditions are going to be like or what it is that you might see. And that's what I think creates some very exciting photography. But at the same time, I don't know if it's going to be like that. So I kind of just have to come out here and see. That's the whole fun of it. Well, this is it. Now, this waterfall back here is, in the springtime, it has the tendency to dump some water here pretty well. But here we are in, pretty much the dead of winter here in Missouri. And I thought that rain would be enough, but it's not necessarily enough. Now, if you look up in that back corner right there, there's actually some pretty good water action that's happening there. And I think if I get myself closer to that, very carefully get myself closer to that, I think I can get a pretty good shot here still, even though I'm not gonna have that dumping waterfall with ice everywhere like I had in my vision, all right? So that's another thing to kind of come to grips with your expectation and reality, okay? So expectation has us like this, where we're like, oh, I'm gonna go shoot today and it's gonna be the most epic sunset and everything's gonna be gorgeous. And then you get there and it's not quite that way. And that can have the tendency to really ruin your photo outing, right? You could get there and be like, man, the lighting conditions suck, I'm just not gonna do anything. And I've seen that happen before in my workshops, where people get there and it's not what they visioned in their head. And because of that, they get frustrated and they just say, you know what, I'm just not gonna take any pictures. Or they take minimal pictures instead of trying to find something that speaks to them. So that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm just gonna take the time to walk around this area. It's a beautiful morning. I'm just gonna take the time to walk around here and see what speaks to me and what I can photograph and what I can take away from here. Because I'm a firm believer that no matter where you are, what you're shooting, or any lighting scenario, there's always something that's going to speak to you that's gonna make you say, oh, that's beautiful. And that's what I'm looking for today. Okay, so I think I found a composition I really like here. I've got my tripod set up. I've got it set up in a portrait mode because I really like how I can capture the bottom of this waterfall all the way up to the top of the waterfall with a wide angle when we're in portrait mode. The composition's kind of speaking to me a little bit. It's very wide, and that's okay. I'm gonna start out wide, and then I might find some detail shots that I like that are happening around this area. And also, I wanna talk about right now, though, is the slowing down the shutter speed here. Now, when I first set up here and I got this photo set up, I put my camera on, got it on f11, and I go to take a picture, and it's like, maybe a quarter of a second or something like that. I don't know the exact details, but it wasn't a long enough shutter speed for me in order to capture this, and I was at ISO 50. So I can't bring my ISO any lower to get a longer shutter speed. So there's a couple things that I did here. The first one that I did was I tried to use what we call a circular polarizer. And the circular polarizer is going to do two things for me here. Number one, it's going to cut down on any of the reflections that I'm seeing on the rocks as the water passes over them. So it makes it so you can almost see through that water, which is gorgeous. Then we have those streaking water strokes that are happening over top of it. It almost looks like they're just like drapery amongst the rocks here on this waterfall. The second thing it's going to do is it's also going to slow down the shutter speed. Now, if you use a normal CPL, regular CPL, depending on the CPL that you're using, you might lose a half of a stop to one stop of light, which is exactly what I want to do here because I want to slow down the shutter speed. So I started with that one and it looked great. I liked the look that I was getting, but then I tried another circular polarizer that I have that's made by a company called Breakthrough Photography. When I was out of Oregon, they gave me these filters and said, hey, have fun with them and play with them, and of course I obliged. So I used this 6-stop dark CPL because I couldn't find the 3-stop dark CPL that came with that kit. So I probably left it at home, like I leave most of my gear when I need it. So here I am with the dark CPL. It's a 6-stop CPL, which is gonna really slow down that shutter speed. And that's okay, because when you're photographing a waterfall, you kind of want to get the personality of that waterfall. Now, depending on the nature of the waterfall and how you're trying to photograph this waterfall, every waterfall is going to have a different personality to it. So you're trying to find the right shutter speed that matches your vision. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there's any right or wrong answer for this. I'm not going to say that every time you photograph a waterfall, put it at 3.2 seconds, because that's not the case. If you were to photograph Niagara Falls at 3.2 seconds, that may as well be a 30-second exposure here because of how fast that water's dumping. Now here, if I go 30 seconds, it's gonna be a very long exposure for this. So it really depends. Even in something like Niagara Falls or even some of the Yosemite Falls, if you're photographing that waterfall at like 1/100th of a second, that can actually be considered a long exposure for that because you're gonna get that dropping effect because of how fast that thing is moving. So that's really up to you, what your vision is and how you wanna get that vision across while you're out on location. And as I'm looking at the camera at you, I'm looking back there and holy cow, look at how gorgeous this landscape is. I mean, I'm really glad that I decided I had a bunch of videos I needed to record today at my office, but I said, you know what, I'm gonna go out, I need to get out, and I'm really glad that I did because this is gorgeous. Very beautiful landscape. So one thing I don't want you to ever be afraid to do, especially if you've got a wide angle lens, is get really low and into the object that you want to showcase here. So I'm getting really low with this wide angle lens so that I could really show how the ice was formed here by this little trickling waterfall here that just keeps adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. It's creating a really wonderful texture here, and I want to exaggerate that. So I bring the lens as close as I can to that object, and that'll help force it and suck it into the lens and into the sensor so that that kind of exaggerates what we're seeing there right in front of us. And that's the beauty of a wide angle lens. So, you know, use it to your advantage. It can create some wonderful effects. All right, so I'd say today was actually a pretty darn successful day of photography out here. I'm pretty happy with the results, and I know that going into post, I'm gonna find some things that I like. Now, as I walk back to my car, let's talk about the types of gear that I wear while I'm out here, because you know, when you're out in the cold environment, it doesn't matter how cold it is, you're gonna want to wear the right type of gear. And what I find a lot of times when I'm doing photography workshops is that people show up wearing the wrong stuff for the wrong weather. You know, sometimes we'll be out, and while the forecast says 50 degrees for the whole day, sounds like a great temperature, when the sun goes down, it gets colder. So you have to keep that in mind. So you want to, I have photography gear that I actually have. It's only clothes that I wear when I go out and I do photography. And it's typically hiking style gear. So I actually had the luxury, if you want to call it that, of going to Arctic survival school a couple years ago with my military service. And during Arctic survival school, we had to spend 60 hours out in the cold and survive in the cold without basically, you know, having the amenities that people have in their daily life. So we learned a lot of things about what you should wear when you're out. Now, if you look at what I'm wearing, well, let's just start from the ground and we'll work our way up. You see, I actually don't look like I'm wearing a whole lot, but I'm extremely warm. And that's because of the types of layers that I choose to wear. So we'll start with my boots. My boots, I wear Gore-Tex boots, and these are Gore-Tex combat boots. And I would actually recommend a pair of Gore-Tex combat boots. Why? Because Gore-Tex combat boots, specifically made by companies like Danner, are obviously tried and true because they're given to United States soldiers to wear in all kinds of inclement weather situations. Today, I actually had my feet in the water. It's 20 degrees outside. I had my feet in the water, didn't get a single drop on my socks, but I was able to maneuver around and get the shots that I wanted and not fear having my feet get wet. Because if your feet get wet, hypothermia kicks in, and well, then you're gonna have a bad day, okay? So then on my feet, I also put merino wool socks. So those merino wool socks are inside my boots. Moving up to my legs, I have 3 different layers on. I have an inner layer that is basically like an Under Armour thermal layer, and then a layer in between that is a merino wool cotton blend. And then on the outer area, I have a hard shell type of pant that is waterproof, or water resistant, I should say. So you have 3 different layers there. I also have 3 different layers on my body as well. I have an under layer, which is basically like an Under Armour type of shirt. That's a thermal layer. Then I have my warming layer, which is a cotton poly blend or a merino poly blend or merino cotton blend. And then on the outside, I just have this puffy coat. This puffy coat by itself wouldn't keep me warm enough out here. That's why I have those 3 layers. So the concept of wearing layers when you're out in the cold, the idea is that you can always shed layers. But if you don't bring enough layers, then you're gonna get pretty cold, okay? So wear plenty of layers and then shed what you don't need. Now your legs are probably gonna be the first thing that get cold, because people tend to think that, okay, I'll just throw a pair of jeans on and go outside in the cold. And that might be all fine and well when you're out just, you know, going shopping or something like that. But when you're gonna be outside in the cold, you want your legs to be warmer. And the reason why you're doing this with your gear, your clothing that you're wearing, is because this clothing, if you don't wear the proper clothing and you're uncomfortable when you're outside, you are not going to want to shoot. You're going to be so cold that you're not going to want to shoot. You're just going to sit there and be in misery. And this has happened on the last 3 workshops I did. People came unprepared with the improper clothing, and what did they do? Well, we were getting great shots. They were so cold they went to the car, okay? Well, we were all nice and warm doing our thing. What I have on my hands are these Valorette gloves, and that's an inner glove and an outer glove, and the outer glove can be zippered shut. It's kind of like a mitten type glove, and the inner glove is basically just a thin warming glove, but it can also be used on touch screens because of the material that it's made out of. So if you have a touch screen camera, it helps to have these. At any time, I can flip this glove over, zip it up, and get my hands back to warmth. I can also throw some of those hot hands warmers into that glove as well to keep those hands warm if I want to do that too. On my head, I've got a balaclava. It kind of makes me hungry when I say that word because I think of baklava, but it's a balaclava, and it allows my neck and my ears to stay warm, and I can even put it up and over my head. Now, I'm not trying to win a fashion show here, okay? That's not the thing. I'm trying to stay warm. I'm trying to stay clean. I'm trying to stay dry. but I don't want to sweat at the same time, because sweat can also make hypothermia kick in. So that's why you have to understand how important it is to shed those layers and know when to shed those layers. I tend to wear this gear in many different forms and fashions based on the type of weather that I'm going to be shooting in. The combat boots, I pretty much always wear them because I never know what type of situation I'm going to be in. So those Gore-Tex line combat boots, also made for women, are great because I'm telling you, my feet are dry, and you've seen the torture I put them through out here in this cold water. So back in the warmth and comfort of my studio here. So I just want to take the time to thank you for watching this, and also remind you that if you get the opportunity to go photograph something with and as the weather changes, do it, okay? So this video that I shot here, that morning, it was 20 degrees, snow everywhere, a freezing fog. I mean, you should have seen the trees. It was absolutely gorgeous. But by 5 o'clock that afternoon, all gone. All the snow, all the freezing fog, gone. Because it warmed up to about 50 degrees and everything just vanished with it, okay? So if you get the opportunity to move with the weather as a landscape photographer, you have to do that. You have to take those opportunities, seize that opportunity so that you can get those photos in that time, because you might disappear. I've lived here for 8 years and I haven't seen anything like this. So I'm glad I took advantage of that, and I'm also really glad I got the opportunity to share that with you. If you're an F64 Elite member, good news. On the website, f64elite.com, there's going to be some continuation content for this blog, so stick around and you can watch how I edit these 2 photos. I'm going to walk you through the whole process, give you some of the things that I think about while I'm editing these things from what I was thinking about when I was there. If you're not an F64 Elite member, now's the best time to join. I'm going to leave a link in the description. There's also going to be one on the card above. It's going to give you an opportunity to join F64 Elite so that you can see all kinds of content, not just this vlog extended content, but also a plethora of courses and critique sessions that are helping people advance their photography exponentially. I've been working on this website for 4 years now, and there's more content on there than you can even possibly imagine. If you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and think that's as good as it gets, oh no, F64 Elite is a place to be. I open up Pandora's box and you can learn a ton. All right, so this is Blake Rudis signing off. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. If you like it, please comment on it, share it, and tell a friend. And if you're interested in F64 Elite, click that link below. I'd love to have you there, and I can't wait to see your images in the next critique session. Thank you, and have a great day.